Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Michaelandbenjaminspodcast. Welcome back to the exceptionally cold, tiny room. Ben, it's somewhat of an icebox challenge in many ways because my toes are cold.
Oh, Michael. You should wear shoes.
Yeah.
They're kind of custom built for that kind of thing.
Ben, we had a debate about whether this was a shoe house or a no-shoe house.
I still firmly believe that you are a no-shoe house, but won't tell me out of some ill-placed way of hosting that you're just being a very kind host and not telling me this.
Isn't it interesting how boring our lives are?
I mean, I don't know, Michael. I think the finer points of shoe etiquette are something that really, get me going. But
You know what else gets you going?
go on.
The theme music.
Theme music for the podcast. We don't actually have any theme music, but I hope someone will mix them up for us. I don't wanna name any names. Rachel, I hope it's Rachel.
That's probably our best lead in a while.
Yeah.
Benjamin,
Yeah.
the reason we padded that intro out with a bit of smack talk about shoes is that very little has happened this week.
It's been a sparse week, Michael. This is the aftermath of the California fire kind of week where there's just not a lot going on.
Is that what it is? Yeah. No trailers, no big announcements.
Well, there were some trailers, but they pertain to our topic, so we can't really go into them just yet.
So Ben, that leads us then I'm going to do the architect from the Matrix.
Oh God.
That leads us irrevocably onward vis-a-vis Polar.
I didn't like that.
No, it wasn't great.
Made me uncomfortable.
Ben, last week you said that the comic book Polar was a very good comic book.
Polar, yes.
And then you said that it was coming out on Netflix with one Mads Mikkelsen playing Polar.
Who I'm a fan of.
You are a fan of him, of he. Don't know.
That lad.
Ben, he was the least memorable Marvel villain.
He was. What's his name?
Casey Liz.
Caecilius. Yeah, he was in that for the paycheck though.
I don't know. I think he was wasted.
He could have been very good. He's got a lot of screen presence.
Yeah.
The man's intimidating. Anyway, Michael, we talked about the comic last week, and I said I was eagerly awaiting the film. I hoped it would be good. And I think this is possibly contrary to everybody else's opinion. I quite enjoyed the film.
Oh, that is interesting, Ben. I thought it was a bag of Mickeys.
Okay, you thought it was a bag of... No, well, we've covered
bad
this before.
Mickeys.
It's a bicky.
A bag of
bickies. A bag of bickies. Yeah, fair enough. I apparently got the rock end of the stick. It is in the wrong era. If this had come out in the 90s, it probably would have been
with Christopher Lambert.
Christopher Lambert. Or I'm trying to think of somebody else. Benicio del Toro, maybe at some point would have played him in the 90s.
Yeah, Benicio del Toro might have done it in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I stole that Christopher Lambert joke from somewhere. I can't remember where it was.
It's Nick's joke.
Yeah.
A Nick joke. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but nobody else seemed to. I think the best thing about it, without shadow of a doubt, is Mads Mikkelsen. I think the rest of it is off here and there. But I thought it was I liked the pace. There was no fluff. Except for that one scene. Are we doing no spoilers?
No, let's do spoilers.
Let's do spoilers. Okay,
spoilers
from
only came out
this
yesterday.
point onwards.
To be honest, Ben, I don't think many of our listeners are going to watch it because I think it's being savaged by critics on the internet.
Oops.
Absolutely savaged, and I don't think a lot of people are going to see it.
Okay.
Also, it hasn't had the cultural impact of the Blind Box. No, what was it called? Blind Box?
Bird Box.
Bird Box.
Bird Box Challenge, baby.
It hasn't resonated with people in that way.
No, I feel like the Polar Challenge would be poking one of your own eyes out and then taking on a large group of men, which would end horribly for most people.
Yes. I think what put a lot of people off is the first 5 minutes. In Polar.
The weird, aggressive, highly saturated Johnny Knoxville scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of T. There's a lot of A.
For those who aren't part of a Christian reformist church, that's ass and titties.
Tits and ass.
Tits and ass.
There's a lot of tits and ass.
There's a lot of tass.
There's a lot of... Well, there's not a lot of... But in the film itself, there is more unnecessary animal cruelty than you would hope.
Yeah, what was that? I think that was a direct middle finger to John Wick. So for anyone who hasn't seen Polar, anyone who doesn't intend to see Polar, it is. I'm going to keep changing it.
Keep changing, change it up.
There's a scene in it where he gets a dog.
Yeah.
Very similar to how John Wick gets a dog in the thing. And then, of course, he's an international assassin. The dog goes bump in the night. He wakes up, shoots the dog dead. It's pretty
very cruel. Like, very cruel.
Gratuitous sex abounds. There's a ridiculous scene where Mads Mikkelsen has his way with a young one up against a pane of frosty glass.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Ben. One of my speakers on my computer broke when I was watching it. So I had to put on the subtitles so I could understand what was happening properly. And it said things like, titties squeak against glass. Like, oh, no.
Oh, how excellent.
Yeah.
Titties squeak against glass. Look, I enjoyed it. If for nothing more, I enjoyed the fast pace of it. I enjoyed some of the editing. Mads Mikkelsen was very good in it, I thought, compared to everybody else. Matt Lucas was a bit irritating.
Grotesque.
I think that was the purpose, but I didn't understand.
I think grotesque is a good word to describe the entire film.
It's very bloated in places.
Also, It feels like 6 or 7 different films. The team of assassins who are sent after him, they're in a totally different film than Vanessa Hudgens.
Oh, Vanessa Hudgens I thought was terrible.
And Vanessa Hudgens is in a totally different film from Catherine Winnick.
Catherine Winnick was very attractive.
She is very attractive.
Where did Catherine Winnick come out of? Why have I not been aware of Catherine Winnick
Catherine
before
Winnick,
this?
before Brie Larson was cast, Catherine Winnick was the internet's favourite for Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I would actually be in favour of a serious retro casting and going backwards and re-editing the entire film with Catherine Winnick in it.
We'll see. Let's see. Brie Larson is an Oscar-winning actress, so it might be good. And then all of them were in a different film from the grotesqueness of Matt Lucas and his leather-clad evil female henchman.
That was weird. Now, see, this is one of those awesome things where I got really involved in watching it yesterday, and I was excited because there were a lot of things. This is kind of what happened to me. This is Watchmen syndrome for me.
I really enjoyed Watchmen.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting thing because lots of people didn't, Michael.
Yeah. Well, they're just wrong.
But I got really excited when I would see a scene from the comic book that was very well done in the film, and it excited me. As a young teenage comic nerd. And I think a similar thing happened here in that many of my favourite beats from the comic have been replicated in film format.
Is it as close a remake as the Watchmen film?
No, not at all. There is a lot played around with. For example, there is no love interest in the first novelization or graphic novel of Polar.
Is there a love interest?
Well, they toy around with this friendship with Vanessa Hudgens thing, and then the gunsmith, the character who's played the gunsmith, who I don't think even gets a name in the movie.
Remember, Ben, I haven't read the book, so I don't even know who that is.
He is the young. She is the person that Mads Mikkelsen gets off with.
Oh, the seducey lady.
No, not the seducey lady. He does have his way with the seducey lady, and that whole scene with those 5 assassins that close in on the cabin, that is the opening scene of the comic.
Oh.
So they've taken that, and I quite enjoyed watching that, purely because I really enjoyed reading it.
Right.
But now that you are slowly going through it, I am realizing how correct you are and how juxtaposed all those tones are in the film.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
very
going to
odd.
have to agree with you now. I didn't want to agree with you.
And the guy who plays the ginger hitman looks like my friend Dave.
He looked very Irish. I assumed he was going to be a little Irish assassin.
Yeah, no, he
Colin Farrell.
He was a little Russian fella, but he looks like my friend Dave. I'll show you a photo. Would you just continue?
Yeah, you just keep going.
Now
that you've mentioned all that, I realize I'm very wrong. The color grading was
weird,
very weird.
Yeah,
heavily saturated at the beginning of the film, then incredibly muted in the scenes where Mads Mikkelsen's character, Duncan Fizzler, for anyone else, where he was talking to his tax accountant or where he was talking to his doctor. The doctor scene was very strange. where he gets, oh my god! Oh, please get permission to use his face in the video so people can see how damn close he is.
I thought it was him, to be honest.
My god. He looks like a buffer version of the guy in the film, though.
Yeah, well, he's not a big dude either. He's only like 65 kilos.
He does not dress like a Russian from the 80s, though.
No, but I mean, you could if he was in a film. I genuinely thought, oh, Dave's in this film.
Yeah. Johnny Knoxville was a very strange... Oh my god!
I thought Johnny Knoxville might have...
He's the same height.
I know.
He's the same height.
I thought it was him.
What?
I thought Johnny Knoxville was a bit of stunt casting, a bit of... what's your one from E.T.?
Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, a bit of Drew Barrymore and Scream casting.
Just to get them in.
Just to go, oh my god, someone famous just got killed.
Yeah, maybe. Because you expect them to have a more central role and then all of a sudden...
Yeah.
Boom!
Yeah.
Look, now that you've mentioned it, I'm very ashamed of myself.
No, Ben, look, don't change your mind.
I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed a lot of the editing and the pace. I think it moved, and I did think there was relatively little fluff, except for Vanessa Hudgens, who acted like an anchor around the neck of the entire film at times.
Here's the thing, right? This might be because of your comic book sensibilities, but a lot of Hollywood reviewers think they were the only good bits of the film.
Yeah.
And all the unnecessarily cruel killing was unnecessarily cruel.
I don't think that every film has to win an Oscar. And I
That's
thought
true.
Vanessa Hudgens was very out of place. She has a...
So out of place, you can't even bother saying her name correctly.
What is it? What did
Hudgens.
I say?
Vanessa Hudgens.
Vanessa. Anyway, Vanessa Hudgens has a multi-picture deal with Netflix at the minute because she was in a terrible Christmas film called The Princess Swap.
Go on.
And she's in this.
Let's
and
review
I'm
that.
assuming we're going to see her pop up. We should do reactions to movies that are completely outside of our purview.
I was going to say Wheelhouse.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
and then on top of that, it would seem that Dark Horse has a picture deal with Netflix at the minute because...
Yeah.
First of all, before we move into that...
Yeah, and first of all, no, I'm going to interrupt your segue because, Ben, there are a couple of things in this movie where they kind of take the piss out of Redbox. Yeah. Out of DVD rental services. Is that from the comic or did Netflix just put that in?
Netflix is just giving the middle finger
Netflix
to Netflix
is getting very meta.
In the comic, he's not in Montana. He's somewhere completely...
In the North Pole.
No, he's not in the North Pole, but he's somewhere much colder and there's no one around. He hunts for his food and he does that kind of thing.
So how does Vanessa Hudgens live next to him?
She doesn't. That character doesn't exist in
really?
the comic book. Yeah.
Oh.
Now, they have set up the sequel. But
what a twist!
But from what you've told me of the reaction to this one, there will be no sequel.
Ben, look, that was first day reviews. Who knows when these things pan out?
Yeah, but in the second comic book, he takes on an apprentice. Who is very similar to him. It's very Me Too in that this woman has been abused and kind of raped now and then. And then
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, she is then cast aside by the mobster that does all this to her. She's thrown into a river and she washes up outside the assassins. The Black Kaiser is his name. In the comics, she washes up on his shore, basically, and he decides to train her. Out of the sentimental
that's definitely where they were going, though.
Yeah, that's definitely what they're building up. So I think what they've done is they've just moved that character from the second comic into the first film and kind of built it up over that. I disliked the twist intensely.
Yeah.
I thought it was completely unnecessary.
Nothing came of it anyway. And like all the worst twists, was quite obvious the whole time.
Yeah, because that one flashback was very specific.
Yeah, why else?
I really hope they wouldn't pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, very good, because it was a film about assassins. Ben, it was, like I said last week, it was no better than Red.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same.
Not as good as John Wick.
Not as good as John Wick.
John Wick, more killing in John Wick, more violence in John Wick, but less glee in ultra-violence in John Wick.
Yes, he seems to be. I think Mads Mikkelsen really thought he was probably signing on
for a John Wick.
Because Mads Mikkelsen...
John Netwicks.
God. That was excellent.
Yeah.
I'll allow that. It was very good. I truly believe he's the best thing about the film, and he plays it very seriously.
He does.
And it's a shame that nobody else in that film takes it seriously. I suppose that's one of the interesting things about those 5 assassins, and now that you mention it to me, they're almost in a weird ultra-violence comedy.
Yeah.
when they visit all the different locations and stuff like
kill
that.
People in an
And
ultraviolet
then Mads
comedy.
Mikkelsen is completely jarring with that tone because he's doing a European style
John
spy
Wick.
thriller.
Yeah.
He's like in a John le Carre novel in his head.
Not quite that much, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
You understand what
Yeah.
I mean?
And then, like, the gratuity of the sex scene doesn't match the violence.
Ridiculous.
I felt uncomfortable watching it,
I
Ben.
felt so.
I felt that someone watched.
I have never been so glad that I was alone in my house. I was like, oh my goodness.
I had to turn it down in case my neighbours thought I was watching porn.
I had the same reaction, but I live
Anyway.
in a detached house, so it's fine. Anyway, moving on from there. Look, if you're into a bit of madness, that's not a Mad Mikkelsen fan club, by the way. But if you're into ultra-violence and all that, give it a watch.
Yeah, look, it's all right. It's all right.
It's grand. It'll pass the time.
Yeah. I said it was a bag of Mickeys. I didn't flat out hate it. I just didn't like it.
Bag of bickies.
Bag of Mickeys.
Like, we're going to make that hashtag bag of bickies.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Totally vis-a-vis nothing here. Have I missed the end of the Magic Order, the comic series?
I think you have. I've missed it as well.
Hasn't it?
I wasn't aware it was...
It feels like it should have happened by now.
Is there a delay?
I don't know.
Is it an art issue?
I don't know. Speaking of Netflix, there's our link. Speaking of Netflix, Ben.
Smooth as butter.
Isn't there? I don't know. There might have been. I'll have to check.
Do you think Netflix is going to eventually turn the Magic Order into a series of some kind?
I imagine one of I don't know why I'm doing a lot of groaning today. I watch a lot of Punisher over the sorry, listeners.
The spikes.
There is Mark Miller, I think, is one of the leading the charge for this kind of phenomena in comic books, that most comic books these days are basically screenplays. Spec screenplays. But the Magic Order for sure seems like Magic Order read like a film. It could have been a film.
Yeah, it does a bit with all the twists and
Yeah. Oh my God, you were the baddie.
Oh no. Whatever shall we do? I don't know.
Yeah.
You have missed it though. I'm sure it's out.
No, I don't know.
I don't know how we missed it.
Someone tell us, some listener save us from looking it up on the internet. It'll take us 45 seconds. Benjamin.
But we could wait a day and a half, Michael, to find out then.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Benjamin.
Yes. Speaking of
Netflix. Oh yeah, that's a good link. There was a trailer for the Umbrella Academy.
The Umbrella Academy has received its first trailer. It has indeed. From Netflix.
Ben, I've never read the Umbrella Academy because I thought it was anime.
That's exactly what I thought as well, Michael. The Umbrella Academy came out when I was around... Is it 2008? Yes, 2008. The Umbrella Academy comic came out in 2008.
That is quite a long time ago.
Yeah, when I was...
Oh, here we go.
That's 11 years from now. I am 27. When I was 16, Michael...
Such a weird way of calculating.
When I was 16. It came out when I was 16. At a time when I had just shaved all my hair off.
Oh.
Having been a huge heavy metal head with a large... I don't want to be
You're not going to say
anti-Semitic,
Willy.
so I'm not going to say what I thought. I still have one of those. But at the time, I had a massive head of hair. And for anyone who knows me, they know my hair grows up and out, not down and long. So I wanted to be a heavy metal head with a long head of hair.
Yeah.
But I was actually a heavy metal head with a large bird's nest perched atop his head.
How is that anti-Semitic?
I was going to say Jufro.
Oh, God. All right. Well, you said it now.
That's because you gave me a perfect lead-in for it. I couldn't resist. Anyway, I was actually, just on a quick side note, I was called the most racist podcast host.
I know,
in
that was
Ireland
great, wasn't it?
Over the weekend, which I really enjoed. I then replied to that, and he followed me on Instagram.
Oh, very good.
So despite my racist leanings, people are still following, baby. Woo! But anyway...
Umbrella Academy, 16.
Jared Way is
your
the auteur of...
I think he goes by Jerry.
Jerry Way.
This is the Jerry Way.
This is the Jerry Way. And for anybody who listens to this podcast and had a teenage angst phase, he's the lead singer of My Chemical Romance.
Oh.
My Chemical Romance.
I knew that.
And out of sheer, I think, stubbornness, I said, no, I am no longer one of those people.
So you
I shaved
gave
my
up
head,
metal.
and I gave up metal. I think it was in favour of talking to girls. More than likely.
Some girls like metal, Ben.
Some girls do, but not the girls I was interested in.
Oh.
And so I shaved all my hair off. I had a bit of a Barney Stinson moment and just kind of went and changed my entire being. And I kind of, out of sheer Will
Now,
just
hold
said,
on.
no, I'm
Ben.
not reading anything by Jared Way.
This story is more interesting than the comic book. When you say you shaved all your hair off, did you like bald?
Yeah, I did it for charity.
You did a bald.
I arranged
How long was your fro?
Oh, I have a picture of it here. So
Yeah,
I'll find the picture and I will show it to Michael. And Michael will have the greatest reaction of all time, I would imagine, to this because it's just fantastic.
This is
But
very
anyway,
exciting.
out of sheer will, I said I wasn't going to do it. And I read it this week, Michael, properly for the first time. And it's only gone and been drawn by one of my favourite artists.
Tom Scully.
No. Gabriel Ba.
Oh,
Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. Sans Fabio Moon.
okay.
And... yeah,
He's one of your favourite Euro comics guys.
he's one of my favourite Euro comics guys, and he only went and drew it. And I went back and read it, Michael.
Yeah.
And My Chemical Romance may be angsty and awful,
Mm-hmm.
but Jared Way can write a bloody comic book.
I think he can, Ben. I think
He's V good, Michael.
he's his own man.
He's his own man,
Yeah.
with his own thing.
His own ideas.
It's so good that Grant Morrison introduces it. It's very, very heavily Doom Patrol influenced.
Yes.
I think there's no avoiding that comparison. But I would imagine it's been quite influential because when I went back and read some Black Hammer, I think Black Hammer has been massively influenced
Well, Ben, I was going to say that.
by both Doom Patrol and Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
It's very clear. Even in the art style is very mimicked of the L. It's going to take me a while to find this. Michael,
Okay,
so
well,
you
maybe
can,
show me
you can
later.
stop watching my
Ben,
phone. No, you
here's the
should have
thing.
an on-air reaction. I think it's important.
Here's the thing, though. There's just from the trailer, because Ben, as I say, I haven't read the bloody thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the trailer, it has a very strong X-Men vibe about it.
It does have a very strong X-Men vibe. I think it's supposed to be kind of a realistic postmodern take on the X-Men. It has heavy emo leanings because that's what Jared Way was at the time. He was very immersed in that. I think very much the Umbrella Academy trailer is exactly what the Hellboy trailer wanted to be.
Go on.
I found it very interesting watching it because it has a strange tone. It's very 80s angsty. The Cure meets Morrissey meets like Robert Sheehan's in it.
Robert
an
Sheehan's in
Irishman, who plays pretty much your typical goth.
Yeah.
Which is very enjoyable to watch. But each character in the Umbrella Academy is kind of like a little homage or love letter to anything sci-fi and horror that
To a
has
genre.
obviously influenced Jared Way.
Right.
When we look at the different characters, there's Space Boy, who's kind of the big character. He's the powerhouse
The
of the
big guy
team.
in a coat.
Yeah, and the team leader. But he's just a love letter to all the 50s sci-fi, space frontier stuff that we all...
Your Flash Gordons.
Your Flash Gordons, your
Flash Gordons.
space Adam Stranges,
Your
your
Buck
Adam
Rogers.
Stranges, these kind of things. Rumor is your typical superheroine.
Who's Rumor?
Rumor is the girl character, not played by Ellen Page, but played by the African-American young lady in the trailer.
I don't know who her name is.
Rumor is her power was to do with her vocal cords. She had a magic scream, so it's like your Black Canaries,
Okay.
etc. Then we have Kraken, who is definitely just your vigilante pulp character.
The Shadow.
who would go out. He has his own Commissioner Gordon in the Umbrella Academy called Lieutenant Lupo. And he has a
He
similar
wolf.
relationship with this lieutenant that Batman has with Commissioner Gordon. But he's kind of an homage to all those 40s and 30s vigilante
The Shadow.
characters that came out. The Shadow, exactly.
The Phantom.
Then there's some Lovecraftian elements. There was another
good.
member of the team called the Tentacle, and he was a superhero that wore a costume, but his power was kind of he could access another dimension through his
Another dimension.
body, and
Another
huge
dimension.
tentacles would come out and.
Like Shuma Gorath.
Yes, exactly. So all of these things were a wonderful love letter. I don't know. One of the interesting things that I was asked when I put it up on Instagram, because I showed that I bought the Umbrella Academy, somebody commented, how do you think they're going to handle the monkey body
That
on
was Sean.
Space Boy? Yeah, Sean Northridge.
Yeah.
Hi, Sean. Shout out to Sean.
Shout out to Sean there.
But he asked, how do you think they're going to handle the movie? I don't think they're going to.
It's a
I think
Martian
he's going
gorilla,
to be
isn't
a big...
Just a big dude.
Big dude, because he's
gonna
got
be
his
like-
big coat on. I think Jared Way has probably had quite a strong hand in this. The first run, by the way, is called the Apocalypse Suite, and it's all about the girl who didn't have superpowers.
Played by noted tiny lesbian Ellen Page.
Okay, not taking any heat for that one. I'm going to back away slowly.
Not a judgment, it's just a fact.
Yeah, noted. Okay, noted tiny lesbian. NTL.
Yeah.
NTL on.
Go back for a
that
second.
could be Ellen from the Ellen DeGeneres show. It's Ellen.
No, she's bigger.
Is she?
Yeah,
Sure.
Ellen DeGeneres
Anyway,
is much taller than Ellen
I think
Page.
she's the girl without superpowers in this. She plays a violinist in the comic, but I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence that there's going to be a violin. They've added some things to the trailer. There's an antagonist. Someone's trying to stop the apocalypse. And that isn't in the comics. It's just them someone's trying to stop them from stopping the apocalypse.
There you go.
Sorry,
that makes more sense.
That was an issue.
Ben, the guy who plays the big guy,
Yes.
doesn't he look a lot like the guy who played the big guy in Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
He does look very, very like him. He looks like Alexander Skarsgård. When I was watching the trailer, I thought it was Alexander
That's true, yeah.
Skarsgård.
They all have that kind of look about them.
It's not. He's very similar to Alexander Skarsgård, but he's an English actor.
Yeah.
Of some kind. He's going to play of some kind. He's going to play Space Boy, who is very important.
An English actor of some kind.
He's going to play Space Boy, so it's going to be interesting to see that. I'm looking forward to seeing Robert Sheehan, because he seems very close to the character. He plays a character called Seance from the comic books, and Seance can channel the dead and has mild telekinesis. He's kind of a love letter to all the Victorian supernatural horror stories, seances, spiritualism, that kind of thing. But it's a bloody good comic, Michael.
Is it?
I thoroughly recommend that people read
This
it.
gets Ben's recommends.
This gets a serious Ben's recommends, and I'm really happy I've gone back and read it when I wasn't in my post, no, I won't be that person anymore phase. I am going to keep looking for that picture on my phone. I know it's there somewhere, and you will see it, Michael.
Now I want to read it.
Yeah, I will give it to you come Monday.
Okay, good. Ben, just a quick question here.
Yes.
Not a loaded question anyway.
Not
This is a
A
genuine
leading
question.
question?
Yes, it's not a leading question.
Okay.
This isn't cash for questions like the
Okay.
British Parliament.
It would be nice if I had cash for questions.
Who published the Umbrella Academy?
Sure. It was only Dark Horse Comics, Michael.
Oh, Ben.
Seamless segue, by the way. Well played.
Ben, what even is Dark Horse Comics?
What even is Dark Horse Comics? Well, this is interesting to me, Michael, because one of the comics companies that gets a huge kind of shout out these days for
Marvel.
creator-driven work is
DC.
Image Comics.
Image
Comics
yeah.
thing. They're now collectively known, since you mentioned the previous two, as the Big Three.
Image is one of the big three.
Yeah, but it is the Big Three these days.
Wow, okay.
And they were around just, I think that always eclipses Vertigo. I think Vertigo was a very creator-driven...
Vertigo's DC though, isn't it?
Vertigo is a DC imprint for mature readers.
What are you doing reading it then?
He got zing. He got me. But very much for mature readers and creator-driven. Obviously, the big one that gets a shout out for that these days is Image Comics. And it's interesting to me because Image Comics started in 1992.
So long ago.
So long ago. And then Vertigo was around
many years ago was that then?
1992 was it's 25 or 26 years. One of the two, because I am 27 and I was born in 1991.
It's my favorite game.
You enjoy that far too much.
Oh, go on.
But
Yes.
they get a lot of credit these days for that. Vertigo gets Sandman credit all the time. Image has Saga. It has
Invincible.
The Wicked and the Divine. It has Invincible.
Who did Sex Criminals?
It's Image Comics as well. So my brain is trying to compute all the different labels and imprints and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Dark Horse seems to have preempted all of those with that business model. Dark Horse started in 1986, and it started with one guy.
I thought you just said it was 1992.
No, that's Image Comics.
Oh.
Image Comics
Dark
started
Horse
in
was
1992.
before even.
Dark Horse came before that. Dark Horse became, in 1986, it became a print publisher. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
A publisher. And a guy called Mike Richardson started it. One guy.
Oh, that's good, because that's my name and my brother's name.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. And you're the son of your father. So
Yeah.
there, Mike Richards and son.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He started a comic book shop called Dark Horse Comic Books.
Just a shop.
Just a shop. And then he turned it into his own publisher.
Oh, what a good bloke.
And he's tried a lot of different things.
Anal.
And I think, I'm sure he's tried anal once or twice. He's only a comic publishing magnate. So there are a couple of things interesting. So it's 33 years old at the current time, before you get me with those sneaky... I have it actually written down. Take a look at that. And I knew you were going to ask. I didn't know I'd have to do so much maths today. But it was 33 years ago. And he's tried a bit of everything when he started out. They tried an in-universe superhero verse.
Right.
They tried to do that. And he found it very frustrating. He didn't enjoy creating a big universe. He didn't want characters to have to be stuffed into that universe.
Yeah, like Netflix.
Like Netflix or Image Comics. Image Comics with Invincible every once in a while would drag all their different characters together. And they didn't make sense when they would be dragged together like that.
They had very little repercussion on each other's comics as well.
Yeah, but I also, like, at a certain point, they did start stuffing new characters in there and pushing them. Now, some of those came to great fruition. Robot, Monster Girl, those became very interesting. But there were other characters that just became gore fodder, where they got ripped apart and torn apart, and that's fine too, but it didn't work for him. So he tried that from, I have it written here, from 93 to 96. So I think he was trying to ride the wave.
How many
of
years
Image
was that?
Comics. That was 3 years.
Very
Michael,
good.
Thanks. He was trying to ride the wave of Image Comics, I think,
right,
in 92, but he lacked a key thing.
Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, Jim Lee. Remember that Image was started by the most popular creators of its time. I think Image gets a lot of its hype. Not that it doesn't make great comics, but the reason it might have eclipsed Dark Horse Comics is because they had those superstar creators come over. He didn't have that.
No.
What he did instead of his superhero universe is he focused almost immediately on licensing other franchises.
Yeah.
So
Aliens.
he could do movie tie-ins. Buffy. He ran the Buffy comic for years, and he ran the more popular Star Wars comics for years. So that's two things. But then he also focused on creator-driven projects, and he gave his creators full rights. Now, Image Comics always goes on as if they were the first people to do this. Not really.
Bad blokes.
This guy was the first guy to say, "That's a cool story. Make it on my imprint."
Put it on my imprint there, guys.
And the other thing on top of that was, he always allowed them to run it for as long as they wanted. Image does a lot of miniseries and things like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I really enjoy. I should, continue this by saying I love Image Comics. I think they make amazing work, but I'm starting to question whether or not they were so trailblazing in comparison with Dark Horse. Now, I could be completely wrong here. If anyone has a better idea of what came first or what
Mike
was copied.
Richardson.
But going off the dates, if Mike Richardson wants to get in touch with me and sponsor the podcast, that would be great. But it focuses on longer runs, and it did all that kind of things. And it's produced some really notable works that we have talked about before without ever really focusing on the publisher.
That's a good point, Ben.
We frequently mention them as some of our favorite comics. Obviously, the big one for us is Hellboy.
Black Hammer.
We mentioned Black Hammer is a huge favorite of ours. And we mention these quite a bit as we go along. But they've had other massive works. Sin City belongs to Dark Horse Comics.
Get out of town, Ben.
Sin City by Mr. Frank Miller belongs. 300.
Was that Dark Horse?
The comic book starring Gerard Butler's abs. Was... What happened to Gerard Butler? Where's he gone?
He's no good. He was in Geostorm.
Oh, Geos. Oh, God. Okay, never mind. Let's forget it. He was in... Mike Allred did Mad Men with Dark Horse.
Was that Dark
Comics.
Horse?
That's him as well. You're a huge Mike Allred fan.
This is a bloody mind
It
blow.
is, isn't it? He did the Buffy comics. He did... what else did he do?
Is there a Buffy comic there?
There's a Buffy comic there.
Is that by Dark Horse?
Buffy, it is Dark Horse. Got the little
Get
Dark
out of
Horse.
town. They're such Dark Horses, Ben.
They're such Dark Horses. You'd swear they were almost living up to their names.
Yeah.
Which they definitely are. But yeah, so Dark Horse has done some huge things. They've done The Mask, Michael.
Mask.
They've done The Mask. But they're huge comic creators, and we have kind of always overlooked the publisher. But I think the thing is, they're not interested. And another really interesting thing about the comics branch of Dark Horse, they have never suffered financially. Even since 1986, they have always gone and made profit.
They don't have their ups and downs.
Strength to strength. Yeah, they don't have ups and downs. They have steady ups. Is what they have. Ups. That's a financial term. You don't have to look it up.
Yeah.
It's very complex.
Very
but
complicated.
Just trust your friends, Michael Benjamin.
You wouldn't understand it.
But I think something else that's really rather interesting about them is they were the first ones to give the movie franchising a go. So they were the first ones to try, and they had relative success here or there. Tank Girl was one of theirs
With Laurie Petty.
which is a cult classic, not a classic. Mystery Men, starring Mr. Ben Stiller.
Oh, that's a great film.
Was a Dark Horse run one. American Splendor, which was based on the independent comic book starring Michael Giamatti. No, not Michael Giamatti. What was his name? Paul Giamatti, there we go. Woo, woo. All the Hellboy movies are one of them. They did The Amazing Screw-On Head. 30 Days of Night, noted horror film, 30 Days of Night, belongs to Dark Horse, and they're filming. R.I.P.D., which we shall never name again because it's just shocking.
It's not great, yeah, it's not great.
They have some upcoming projects, which you will enjoy, Michael. Beasts of Burden.
But the little doggos!
It's Dark Horse, and that's one of their upcoming projects. They don't know whether it's going to be... I don't know if this is part of the Netflix deal, and it's going to be a little series from Netflix.
That'd be brilliant.
With some doggos. You'd enjoy that. Emily the Strange, noted goth icon. Emily the Strange is getting a series in some form. Hellboy, obviously the new movie, is one of theirs. They also have El Zombo Fantasma, which is a hugely popular luchador, supernatural, independent thing. Another one that they spearheaded was The Goon by Eric Powell, which I'm a huge fan of.
I've never read it.
It's a bizarre, twisted world.
He's a man in a cap.
He's a man in a cap. He's basically your classic 90 or 50s thug. He just goes around. He can't be beat, basically. He's just hard as nails, and that's the character. But he goes up against zombies and mystical plots and stuff like that in his little town. And he's just a small town hood trying to keep his turf. And it's a great comic. It's beautifully drawn by Eric Powell. But Dark Horse are big, man.
Yeah.
Dark Horse do some great stuff. And it's weird that they've been so eclipsed by Image Comics. Because I would argue that the quality of art in Dark Horse and the quality of their printing in general surpasses any other comic book publisher at the moment.
That's interesting. I got a Dark Horse graphic novel, and it was not guillotined correctly, and it had to be replaced.
Okay, well
it was replaced pretty quickly though.
That completely goes against what I have. But just looking at your shelf, Michael,
go on.
I see that there's a Hellboy Volume 2 library edition.
Yes.
In a beautiful bound hardback.
It was a gift, Ben.
It was a gift. Yes. Was from a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But then they also frequently have very beautiful hardcover editions. They put a lot of time and effort into collections. The art itself is clearly done slowly over time, and they never switch artists, which I'm a huge fan of. They give artists time to do their own work. So if they're late on a deadline, that's fine. They'll deal with it, and the art quality never changes. We don't have any of this changing of styles in the middle of anything. So it's real nice, Michael. I'm a huge fan, as it turns out, of Dark Horse which I did not realise. Excuse me, that was a burp there for any listener. That was
Mystery Men had one of my favourite conversations of all time in the film, where the shoveler... where the shoveler is arguing with his wife, and he says to his wife, "Lucille, God gave me a gift. I shovel well. I shovel very well." And then she says, "You shovel better than anyone, but that does not make you a superhero." Absolutely.
I think that's very accurate. Very accurate.
Very, very good. Benjamin.
Yes.
Funnily enough,
yes.
Despite the fact that I did a whole conceit there of not knowing what Dark Horse was, I went and I watched The Mask.
You do know what Dark Horse is.
And then I do. It was all an elaborate ruse. Ben,
well played.
I watched The Mask. Was it 1993's The Mask? I don't really remember. Ben, The Mask... No, not Mask. Not the TV show Mask.
Is that the one with the guy with the misshapen head who goes to high school?
No, Mask Crusaders working overtime, fighting crime. Secret about a group of guys who have vehicles that change into...
Sorry, I fear in me saying... I fear that in me saying that I don't know what that is, you have taken that for a chance to explain to me what that is. I should have said I don't know or care.
Ben, that is not in the spirit of podcasting. Anyway, Ben, The Mask. Tell us about the comic book there very briefly.
So we've mentioned the comic book on the podcast before, Michael. It's bloody violent. It's a You used the word grotesque earlier,
did,
Michael.
Actually.
I would have to agree. It is. It comes again in the form of The Mask. The Mask in the film is Jim Carrey. It's very much aimed at children, almost.
Well, hold on. You talk about the comic, then I'll talk about the film.
Yeah. But the comic is decidedly aimed at adults, and possibly adults with some mental health issues. The Mask turns whoever wears it into a serial killer. And... boy, oh boy, mass serial killer would be the term used. The person becomes psychotic, engages in cartoon violence with real life consequences. So what I mean by that is yes, he turns his hand into a mallet and smashes it down on somebody, but this time you see eyeballs, gore, splat, bone matter that comes out from that. They're not flattened into a pancake. So nothing happens to him. He lives by the reality of cartoon physics, but everybody else lives by reality physics.
So Ben, I went to see the film. Well, the reason I asked you to do that is,
sure.
I saw The Mask obviously when I was quite young because it came out in 1994, Ben, and I came out in 1982.
You came out in 1982
of my mother's womb, not the closet.
Oh, your mother's not going to thank you for that.
So I saw it when I was 12, and some of my friends were a bit younger, Ben. And one thing I will always associate with The Mask is a friend of mine who was a 10-year-old.
Yes.
When we went to see The Mask,
yes,
there's a very famous scene where a wet Cameron Diaz, comes into Stanley Ipkiss, Jim Carrey's bank. And someone among my group of young friends stood up and shouted, "Get me a condom." And then everyone else laughed like that was the funniest thing in the world. And that's the only thing I can think when I see the film The Mask.
Somebody get me a condom.
But not in a Jim Carrey voice, just in a normal 10-year-old boy voice. Presumably he had just learned what a condom was.
Yeah, and that was a necessary thing for the stirring in his loins.
So anyway, Ben, The Mask, the film, I assume most people have seen it. The thing about The Mask, the film, is, although it is a kind of zany madcap adventure, and a very stylized zany madcap adventure, actually, very stylized, very much shot on sound stages in a fictional city, and the kind of thing you wouldn't get away with in a comic book movie these days, like a big piggy bank with the word charity written on the side of it.
It has the classic hollow cobblestone sound effect.
Yeah.
Because all cobblestones are hollow, Michael. As you know yourself.
It's quite odd. It's an odd film. But The Mask, even in that film where he's the bad guy.
He's the bad guy in everything. He's an anti-hero. He's a true... He's not even an anti-hero.
No, he's just the bad guy.
Dick. Yeah,
The Mask is the bad guy. What the film really turns out to be about is Stanley Ipkiss trying to use the mask to do good.
For good.
But the Mask is definitely the villain. Like, he's a more grotesque and obviously evil villain when the mask is worn by the other characters.
Yeah, but it's the same force, just in different host bodies.
Yeah.
It's always malevolent.
When Stanley has it on, it's bloody, it's a bit rapey. It's very sexually aggressive.
It's very gropey. Wouldn't survive well on Twitter these days.
No, Tumblr would not be a fan.
No, Tumblr's not a fan of anything anymore.
Like, kills people pretty complacently. Yeah, and I was watching it thinking, The Mask would be a great villain for a superhero team-up film because he is essentially unbeatable.
He's such a hard thing to handle. Yeah. They've done various crossovers over the years. I think we had a Lobo versus the Mask, and I think various heroes have come across him in crossover events in the past. But they usually find some way to contain him or separate the Mask from the person.
That's really all you can do.
But they can't stop him once he's in full swing. It just doesn't work.
And as a child, I think, a young teen, I don't think I ever noticed that kind of underlying horror of the scenario because you're too focused on it's Jim Carrey doing a funny voice. Sure. The other thing, Ben, is I dare you to go and watch The Mask and then confront Ryan Reynolds, who I think is the same age as me, and definitely The Mask was a formative experience for him.
It was his formative experience. It's just him.
Yeah, because the Mask is Deadpool.
Yeah, he just learned. That's obviously how he decided to be charming, and he just saw Jim Carrey doing his shtick, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do that."
But even more so than I thought. Like, I always thought Deadpool's kind of like The Mask. His intonation, his sentence,
everything,
like his delivery,
cadence,
the looks to the camera.
I hadn't thought of that actually.
Just watch. I'll show you after, actually.
Sure.
But if you're on YouTube, go and watch the first transformation scene where he first transforms into the Mask and confronts the landlady.
Okay.
It's Ryan Reynolds. It could be Ryan Reynolds behind the mask. It's the same voice. It's although they are both Canadian comedians. So
I forgot Jim Carrey was Canadian.
Yeah, look, the other thing is Ryan Reynolds is now married to what is essentially the 2018 version of Cameron Diaz in 1994.
Blake Lively is great. Huge fan of Blake Lively.
So was Ryan Reynolds, but obviously he was influenced by 1994's Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz, that was her first movie. It was
Cameron
Diaz's debut. What a debut to have.
What a debut. And
what a debut.
You could have re-subtitled the film The Mask, Isn't This Lady That We Found Pretty?
The Mask, Don't Stand Up Too Quickly.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what else is weird about it?
Go on.
There's so much smoking in it.
Oh, it's...
Everyone's smoking.
There's that one scene where he plays the French person.
Yeah.
In the Striped Jumper, and he has like a stack of cigarettes.
But also, he smokes in his fantasy sequences to show he's cool.
Oh, yeah.
And Cameron Diaz keeps lighting cigarettes. It would never happen in a kid's movie now.
I have to ask you a question.
Go on.
Do you intentionally intonate incorrectly occasionally? Are you just so good at it now that it just slips in?
Because I'm saying Cameron Diaz.
Well, you just said Cameron. You skipped the E.
Yeah, no, I'm doing that on purpose.
Genius. It's amazing. I really enjoy it. It does make everything funnier for me.
Thanks, Ben. That's really what I'm doing. Because look, I recognise I have a boring voice, so I have to make up for it somehow.
Michael, don't be silly. Don't put him. Listeners, if you or anyone thinks that Michael has a boring voice, don't get in touch with the podcast, please. Because we want to keep his. Jesus, Michael.
Yeah, I got a bit aggressive there. So anyway, Cameron Diaz. Cameron.
You can't do it now.
There are a lot of lingering shots of Cameron Diaz.
They hold that camera.
Yeah, there's another thing that I liked about it, which is there's a kind of a slightly more homely but still very attractive ginger lady reporter who's introduced, and she's very much a Lois Lane character.
Yeah.
And,
she was a real bad egg, though.
But you would really think that she's going to be the nice one and that Cameron Diaz is the one who's going to betray him.
Yeah,
and
they set her up.
They switch the expectations around there.
They subvert that genre.
Yeah. It's not a bad film, actually. The special effects hold up surprisingly well as well for 1994.
One of my childhood favourites. I remember watching the TV series that was spun off of the film as opposed to the comic, and being horribly disappointed that it wasn't Jim Carrey. It didn't sound like him. Didn't look like him. I loved The Mask when I was a child, and I would possibly formative for me as well, where I realised that you could raise your voice beyond the normal level of human hearing, and it's never gone away.
Yeah,
never gone away. I cannot find a picture of me. I've been very rude to Michael throughout the podcast today. Cannot find a picture of Ben with long hair. It's very disappointing. I am going to send him one later as soon as I find it.
I'll do a reaction video.
Because I think you should do a reaction video, because I truly think this is something you don't know about me. I really feel that it's something that you should know about me.
Yeah.
Because I will never hear the end of it.
I would like to see your humorous hair, please. Ben.
My girlfriend did contemplate breaking up with me because she couldn't shake the image of it from her mind.
That's fair enough.
I'm sure there were other reasons she contemplated breaking up with me. If she's listening, you're great.
Good egg.
Thanks for sticking around. Really appreciate it through thick and thin. But yeah, Dark Horse. Bloody Dark Horses all around.
Bloody Ben, did you see 2004 Son of the Mask?
No, I didn't. That was Alan Cumming, was it?
Yeah. He's no Jim Carrey.
I think they wanted him to be. I don't know why they expanded the mythology in that way. I didn't think there was any need to have the actual God of Mischief in it. One of the first possible on-screen representations of Loki.
Well, actually, that was the kind of fun thing when I was watching the film. Stanley Ipkiss goes to a mask expert, and the mask expert says it could be one of the Scandinavian night gods, possibly Loki. And Jim Carrey says, "Who's Loki?"
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get
today,
that.
It'd be like, it's Tom Hiddleston.
You
turn into Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston is in The Mask? That doesn't make any sense.
If we do ever start a heavy metal band, Night Gods is definitely... Scandinavian Night Gods is definitely what we're calling our band.
Or Tom and the Hiddlestons.
That'll be our pop 80s funk band.
Ben, let's wrap it up
Tommy and the Hiddlestons. If you or anyone wants to know where Tommy and the Hiddlestons are playing next, we are playing playing Liverpool. We are playing Glasgow. We are playing... No, we're not going to any of those locations. We're staying here in the tiny room.
Yeah, we are.
And we're never making music together because if our rendition of Major Tom has taught us anything...
Oh, we forgot to upload that.
It's that. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll... There's going to be a simultaneous upload this week.
Yay.
We're going to have two little things. Check out the Instagram. You'll probably hear us there butchering a classic. But anyway, yeah. If you are a fan of Dark Horse, what are you a fan of in Dark Horse?
Yeah.
Have you been reading Dark Horse for a while?
Yeah, like me. I've not realised it.
Have you realised that you were Dark Horsed? Did you realise that you were always reading Dark Horse, or is this a revelation to you that some of your favourite comics are Dark Horse?
Maybe we're just idiots.
Maybe we're just maroons. I don't know. But it caught me off guard anyway, and I've been delighted to trip through the thing because I have so many Dark Horse comics on my shelves that I never realised. Never.
A whole IDW shelf on it. They're terrible.
Some of the big reads that you can pick up from Dark Horse. Some of the ones
do
we
some
recommend.
Ben's recommends. Yeah, good point.
Some Ben's recommends. Black Hammer, great comic. Umbrella Academy. Get in there before the series comes out. Get in now, read.
It'll probably be an Eason in the read it before it's hot section.
And since I bought it from them, it's in Subcity. I may as well give a little plug since I actually bought it from them and tagged them on Instagram, and they liked our posts. So the secret's out, lads. Secret's out. It's there. Not that we're pushing any one comic company.
Oh.
You can find it anywhere comics are stocked. Black Hammer is great. Some of the early Buffy runs are quite good.
I like the Buffy season 8 stuff. It was pretty good. And the Angel season 6 was pretty good too.
A lot of tie-ins there. I'm a big fan of the Goon. If you like kind of odd, obscure stuff, check out the Goon. And then Polar comes from them. But there's another wonderful thing called... I'm not going to remember what it is. It's about... It's Rashomon. It's a series of detective mysteries set in feudal Japan, drawn by the same guy that did Polar, Victor Santos, and they are a ton of fun to read. They dip very heavily into Japanese mythology and folklore, and they're kind of supernatural mysteries with a samurai detective.
Oh, all right, then that's it, Ben. A bit of a shorter one this week because there was no news.
There's no news.
No news.
Bloody entertainment industry, get on it.
Get on it, entertainment
industry. We have a
industry.
podcast to keep going here.
I think we're essentially in the pre-Marvel vacuum now. No one wants to drop anything because it's getting too close to the double whammy of Captain Marvel.
We don't want to be blindsided by a bloody profit storm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it from us, guys.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Did you tell people to like us on Instagram?
Yeah, there's Instagram.
iTunes.
There's
tell them about iTunes.
There's our new Michael and Benjamin's ASMR channel. And no, there isn't actually. This is my loud voice. Instagram. Give us an hour review on the iTunes. Instagram is probably the best way to get in touch with us if you want to get in touch with us.
These days, yeah.
Or
the Reddit.
Facebook is gone. We're on Reddit as well if you want to see see what we're liking, see what we're upvoting.
Yeah.
Take part in some of our little mini
polls.
Reddit surveys.
Little polls.
We do a few polls here and there. But yeah, just get in touch with us in general. We'd love to hear from you.
And just as a kind of final question, is Ellen Page the smallest lesbian?
Yeah, if you could let us know. We probably can't put that on Instagram without getting tagged for some kind of
harassment.
Yeah.
Ben, you're the worst.
Yeah.
Why'd you say that even?
Yeah.
I'm
awful.